Hey guys, Retired at 40. Thanks for joining me again on part 2 of the Geodesic Dome build. Today we're going to put some greenhouse plastic on. I'm going to show you how to make some inexpensive stakes to hold the framework down. And most importantly, we're going to make this a self-watering greenhouse. So stick around. So it's that time of year where the weather is very bipolar. When I made part 1 last week, I was in shorts and a t-shirt. And now I'm in a hat and a fleece. But that just goes to show you why you need something like a greenhouse to keep cover over your plants, especially if you're planting early or if it's the end of the growing season and you're just trying to extend it another couple months. And since I made part 1, I've actually have a couple of improvements through the help of viewers and just my own brainstorming in the meantime. So I'm going to show you those right now. One of the problems that I was concerned with on this, in the first one, was making this just a clean area in here. And I saw there's a place called Zip Tie Domes. They sell a piece that will work for this, but it's extremely expensive just for something that can be very simply made. Alright, I have not decided which of the two options I'm going to do yet, so I'm actually just going to try and draw it out for you. But this would be where all 12 of your hoops come together. You'd take a section of PVC. This is actually a 4-inch and it won't work, it's not big enough, so it would have to be a 6-inch or an 8-inch. So you would cut a section off of that, so we'll call it like a section like this, and you would stick that in the middle here, and you would cut a hole for each one of these to slide into. So if you're looking at the open way, this would slide through that hole and they would all meet up together, and then you would take something and you would fasten them all together. So if you were looking at it from the top, down like this, you'd have 12 hoops coming in, or they would all be evenly spaced here. Where all of them come in, you would just tie them all together. I think you could probably make one for $5 and maybe half an hour of your time. So option 2 would be that these would all be layered and they would all stack on top of each other. You would put a bolt through them and then you would heat them up and make this part flat. So once your bolt came together, it would only be about this big. So where all of your 12 pieces came together, right here you would put a carriage bolt, just like we did in the first video, down through the top of them. But these would be heated up and they would be flat, so they would be quite a bit more thin than they are right now. So if you want to make some really inexpensive stakes, this is just rebar. I believe this is 3/8, which is one of the smaller sizes, which is plenty stout for what you need it for. You also need some bolt cutters. Depending on what type of soil you have will depend on the length of what you need to build. The soil is really hard here, so I tend to make mine a little bit shorter, but if you have very soft soil, you're going to want to make them quite a bit longer so you can drive them way down. Alright, so I've cut mine to 40 to 42 inches long. That should give me plenty of material that will be in the ground after we put a loop on these, which is what we're going to do next. Also, if you don't have bolt cutters, you can cut these a couple different ways. You can also use like a cutoff wheel or a grinder. So if you have one, the first thing that I like to do is grind these down so you have a nice point to drive into the ground. So now that we have a nice point on our stake, and we're going to use the opposite end of the pointed end, you can throw it in a vise like this. And what we're going to do is heat it up with a torch. But we want to bend this enough so that it will make a candy cane shape and wrap around that pipe. And that way when you hit it into the ground, it's pulling that pipe into the ground. So now that this is bent, you can see what I'm talking about. This wrapped around here real nice, so when we get that pounded into the ground, it's actually just going to wrap around that. There you go, like a glove. So when it's all said and done, you'll have 12 rebar stakes that are 3.5 feet long, and rebar is about $3 a stick for those. So really you're getting 12 stakes for $12. It does take a little bit of time, but for what you're getting, it's really inexpensive. Alright, let's get some plastic on this. You're going to need some rope, and then you need to just lay out all of your plastic to make sure it's going to be able to cover your dome. So I kind of mentioned these clips last time. I'll put a link from Amazon to so you can check these out. They're real slick. You basically pull your plastic tight, clip it right onto it, and it holds the plastic where you want it to go. You preferably want to do this on a calm day, or you might end up in the next county, because this basically turns into a giant sail. You want to do one pull at a time. You want to leave enough slack on the bottom that you can tuck it under, so that'll give you a nice seal. Pull all of the slack out of it. Put your clip on. So you can also, this is why you want slack on the bottom. You can wrap this around, and you can get one of these that will actually clip onto there, and then you can put your stake onto it so it clips onto this and holds your plastic at the same time, and that will really keep the inside of this all sealed up. So there's two different ways you can do this. You can see that with one piece of plastic you're going to get some bunching up on the top here. It's not professionally crafted like this one, where there's strips sewn together to fit the outline of the dome. But you can do two pieces, so one right here and then one for the cap, and then just use your clips to clip those together, and that would give you one solid piece with very few seams. You kind of have to do a lot of clever bending and folding to look good and to get it tight, but it's worth the time. Once the plastic is on and tight, it adds a lot to the strength of this thing. So obviously you're not going to cover this with plastic all year long. In fact, you're probably only going to have the plastic on for maybe 2 or 3 months out of the year. So what do you do with the dome after those 2 or 3 months is up? Since we're using a trampoline, you might have part of the jump pad left. Ours is actually in decent shape still. It makes a great shade barrier. And it's actually got these clasps all over the place, so it'd be great for tie downs. So you just throw this thing right over the top of the dome like this. It makes a nice shade blanket for you. So ever since I started making my first self-watering bed, then I made a self-watering hoop house, then I made my whole garden self-watering. So one of my main requirements now, anything that I build to grow food has to be self-watering. I put it on a very inexpensive battery-operated Orbit timer. I'll put a link in the description of the one I use. I love to garden, but I hate having to water for 30 minutes a day. So here are the self-watering units that I use. I like them because they're battery operated, and you just hook them up to a hose. You just hook them up to your regular hose bib. There's different types. There's a single zone like this. There's a double zone. They make a 3 and I think even a 4 zone if you have different things that you want different watering times for. I like them because I can water my lower garden at one time in the morning, and then I can water the greenhouse at a different time in the morning. So let's hook this thing up to become self-watering. But first, if you're new to the channel, I want to take a second to welcome you. We do some gardening, we do some self-sustained living, we do some cooking, we do some food preservation, and you get to join me and my family on our retirement at the age of 40. So if you like the content we provide, give us a thumbs up, throw us a comment to say hello. We always love hearing tips or suggestions. And take a moment to subscribe and click the bell to get notifications of new videos. So normally when I use PVC and make something self-watering, I actually use the PVC to make it self-watering. I use that as the water supply. This will not work in this case because our base is a trampoline. So after a little bit of brainstorming, I have a solution. Also take a minute to check out my videos on this elevated self-watering bed and also this self-watering elevated bed. So I thought of a whole bunch of different ways to make this self-watering, and then I came to the conclusion that it's really not that difficult. I think I was overthinking it. So I just basically took some stuff that I had laying around just from other projects. If you built the dome from part 1, you have some leftover 1-inch PVC. And I had some old crappy garden hose that had a couple holes in it, and really we only need about 8 to 10 feet of a good hose. And then I went into the irrigation section at Lowe's, and they make something that you can adapt a garden hose to a sprinkler system. It's just this white piece here. This would screw onto your regular old garden hose just like this. And then there's an elbow that goes from that and gets you to the right thread. for a sprinkler head. And then the sprinkler head is a 360, which is perfect because the dome is 360 degrees in a circle. So I'm just gonna take these little extra pieces that I had from building the dome, cut them up into like 1-inch bite-sized pieces, just like we used to make the supports for the dome. Alright, then we're gonna take all of our little pieces, and then I've got a 1/16 drill bit and a 3/8 drill bit. We're gonna set these in a vise. We're gonna drill one hole on one side, one hole on the other using the 2 drill bits. Alright, so I'm making 6 of these. I've done the 6 3/8 holes on one side, and then punch through here with your 1/16 and drill a hole all the way through. On these bigger holes, it's definitely helpful if you have a vise to kind of keep it tight. Otherwise, it kind of likes to break free. So we've got our 6 hose holders. You're gonna need 6 little tiny screws like this. And what these big holes allow is for you to slip your impact or your drill through here and actually get to the screw. Alright, so it's time to hook up all of our water. You have to slip the hose through the cuff, and see there is a little bit of room that allows for your screw. But then you need to get a hose mender like this. They're about $1, and we're gonna put the hose mender on after we've fed it through all of our cuffs. Okay, we're all hooked up in the greenhouse. All right, let's see if it works. Success. Make sure you check out my other self-watering low tunnels and beds that you can stick inside of this greenhouse to add even more cover to the winter months. This is Retired at 40, reminding you to live life simple. We'll catch you next week.